You know, and the mates, and you're going. I mean, they were very, very powerful record company. They had a host of different bands, but because of that, they were fit to put us on the bills in America, and we ended up with a band called Ratt. That was the first American tour, and they had sold 10 million albums of the first record. Huge, way bigger. Bon Jovi were just starting out as well, and they had their first album out and only sold 250,000. It was nothing. It was peanuts compared. These boys were flying, and we were added to the bill. So the way they looked at it in America was, we opened up, and it was all about putting people, getting people into arenas so that they could do the bigger shows. So by that time our record was out, and we probably were good for maybe 1,500 people. Bon Jovi was probably good for maybe 2,500 people, and Ratt was good for the rest. So between us, we could sell out a 10,000 seater. It was a no-brainer. So that's what they were doing. It was very clever, and it meant then that we got exposed to the Bon Jovi's and Ratt's audience, and of course we would see the album moving up the Billboard charts. And it was, the longer we stayed out there, the more impressive it became, because the more people we were hitting on. You know, so it made sense. So we ended up doing 4 months in America, the first tour, non-stop. I think we did 25,000 miles in 4 months in a car. Yeah, we didn't take the big tour bus or anything like that. That we could have, and the record company were giving us tour support money and all at that stage, and we said no, we'll put that money towards keeping the band on the road, and playing to as many people as we can. And there was a few other bands on that were on the bill. It zigzagged. There was one night it would be Bon Jovi, and then it would be another night, it would be another Twisted Sister would fill in. They would be doing it, so it kind of leapfrog, but we were opening up, so we were very lucky. Because we got on really well with the guys in Ratt. They liked us. I don't know whether it was the Irish humour or whatever it was, but they really liked us. I don't think they were that enamoured with the Bon Jovi boys, or maybe they felt they were too much competition. I don't know, but they took to us anyhow, and they looked after us really big time. Yeah. They really did look after us, you know, and they always had a shout out for us at the end of the night. And don't forget the band, one was from Ireland, they came and played here tonight, you know, and they've a new album out, and so they were really, really kind to us. Really, and Twisted Sister, they were great as well. They always gave us a shout out at the gig, and they said they knew. You said, we know how tough this is, what you're doing. You know, you're doing it in a car with a wee hired truck behind with the gear, and we were doing the driving. We had one tour manager, Damien, and went on to work for Mary Black and Sharon Shannon, and a lifetime working with them afterwards. But Damien was our tour manager, and it was a big event. So Damien was doing the drive, and when Damien get too tired, we would step in and do the driving. You know, John or me. And so we were doing the gigs like all across America, and it was really funny because you had the big tour buses. You had Ratt, you know, and the big tour bus, and their entourage, and then you had Bon Jovi, their entourage, and then you had our little car. Going up that was with a U-Haul truck, a wee truck on behind with the gear in it, you know. So, but it paid dividends, because we actually, when some of the bands ran out of tour support money, they were told to go home with the record company, because the record company said, the record's not really happening. You know, you guys go home and write another record. You know, so they sent them packing. There was bands like Fastway, which is Eddie Clark's band. They were sent packing after, because they had the big bus and everything, and you know they weren't warranting the crowds. You know, so they're saying, look guys, you've used all your money on the fancy buses and the fancy hotels. We were living in Motel 6s, you know, 4 to a room. You know, there was 8 of us on the road, I think. Yeah, 8 of us on the road, 4 to a room. When we were doing that gig in the Marquee in London, this young guy come up to Tommy. And said Tommy was always hanging around the front or outside. He was never in the venue where you wanted him, right? He was checking out what was going on, right? So he met this young guy standing outside, and Tommy said, ever the opportunist, Tommy said, sure, I'll get you into the gig. And he says, I'd like to do an interview. And it turned out to be Lars Ulrich. And what Lars was doing, he had a fanzine magazine, and he was well into that whole new wave of British heavy metal. And he come down to the gig to see the band play, and he wanted an interview with us. So he became quite friendly with us then after that. He turned up on quite a few occasions. I remember we were in Stockholm playing with Gary Moore, and they were doing, I think, what was their second album? Ride the Lightning. They were doing Ride the Lightning, and they all turned up to see us, to come down, you know, and they were recording there. You know, and it was lovely. And he says, do you remember the time I was outside the marquee? And Tommy says, oh, I remember well, you know. Yeah. And Tommy says, well, you know, you're certainly on the road to success now, you know. So it was little things like that. And I remember one of the support bands, we because on our days off in America, we didn't take any days off. So Bon Jovi and Ratt would do 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. On that day off, we would do a gig ourselves. So we'd find out where the nearest town was and get the booking agent and make sure they'd put us in a club there, right? And one of the places we were playing in Texas when we were there, I think we were in Fort Worth, and a band rolled up to play support to us, right? I said, great. And that band was Pantera. The very, very early days of Pantera. And they arrived up, not unlike we did. Our first gig in Dublin, we arrived up with a cattle trailer because we had no way of bringing the gear we had. So we arrived up, and they arrived up in a cattle trailer to the gig. And it just reminded us of us. Here we are in America, the big I Am, and this band announces themselves, we are called Pantera and we are doing support. We'd like to do support to you tonight. And we said, oh, fire ahead, lads. And I'll never forget, I heard... I was next door tuning up my guitars as I was always doing, and I told my one of the roadies was Paul McLeod. Paul was a great roadie. He did back lanes and stuff like that. He was a wizard, would work it out on guitars on the road and amps and stuff like that there. And I told Paul, I says, can you get them to turn down that Van Halen record, please? He says, it's really, really loud, and I'm trying to tune, you know. And Paul flicked his head back and he goes, that's not a Van Halen record. He says, that's the guitar player warming up in the support band. And we went, oh, we're in trouble tonight. And it was Dimebag, you know. It was scary. It was absolutely scary. This is Dimebag now. He goes, no, that's the guitar player from the support band warming up, you know. So it was wee things like that, and we dived into the room to say hello to them, you know. And we'd met them a few years after that, and they remembered well when they became really big with Phil Anselmo. Phil wasn't with them at the time, so it was earlier than that. And but they had a couple of albums out at the time, you know, and they were more glam metal and stuff. But you could tell they were just like, wow, these guys are the real deal. Once you heard them play, and his brother Vinny was superb. They were great. But wee things like that, you have memories of that being on the road, and that was just in the blue. They just said, we're the sport band for tonight, you know. We never gave it another thought till we actually heard them warm up, and then we knew we were in for it. but we got up and done our thing anyway, you know. So, but it was little stories like that you met along the way. You met bands, up and coming bands, you know. You know, and they said, oh, you guys are really cool, we watch it MTV. They're saying to us, oh, we like you, you know, you're like us, you know, you're like a garage band, you know, that's where it's at, man, you know, they're going, you know, none of the slits and stuff like that. Of course, Bon Jovi and Ratt were all glammed up, you know, but we used to go on in just the jeans and a denim jacket or a t-shirt, and that was it. There was no airs or graces with what we would do, just pile the guitar on and start playing, heads down, I'll see you at the end, you know, was the attitude, you know. And that was our philosophy. That's what rock and roll was about. We weren't too we may have got a bit influenced by the record company starts putting pressure on you then to look a certain way and do a certain thing, and there may have been a bit of that crept in towards the end, but it never really was us. It was we were more of the Rory Gallagher frame of mind, you know. You know, the lumberjack shirt and a pair of jeans, and off you go and you just play. And I think a lot of people related to that. there was no airs of grace. I remember when we did the Reading Festival, Anvil were on before us, who we all know the story of Anvil and what happened there, and they were on before us, and Lips came off the stage, and as he's coming off the stage, I'm going on to hawk my gear out. We didn't even have roadies on that one. We had one a mixing engineer out front, that was it. So it's pull our own gear out. And he said to me as we're passing like ships in the night, he's hauling his gear up and we're hauling our gear on, and he goes, we're changing our name to Canville after this, because they got canned off the stage, right? But because they went out, it was very glitzy and had all that sort of look of the 80s at the time. When we went out, a pair of jeans, and of course we didn't rub them up the wrong way. And I think they, what I'm trying to say is there was a connection there, and we were fine when we went on. We had no trouble at all from anybody, never, because I don't think we went out as prima donnas out there, pretentiousness about it. It wasn't the big I am, here we are, and Anvil, to be fair, had kind of done that. You know, to be fair, they were great and everything else, but they were kind of talking down to the crowd a little bit, you know, hey man, we're up here, you know, and you're down there. And I just think they slightly rubbed them up the wrong way. They were a great band and everything else, you know. I love Anvil, and Chris Tangridis was involved with them as well. But I'm just saying there was just a level of unpretentiousness about us that maybe allowed us to get away with that. You know, it saved us a lot of trouble, you know, because a lot of times when you're doing support like that, a lot of the audiences in England were very hostile. Oh, very, very hostile. You've no idea what it's like. Very, very hostile. They come in to see one band, and who's this load of upstarts that are coming to play now? We're not interested. So get off, you know. So you really had to have your wits about you when you were on the stage, you know. When we did Nebworth, that was with Deep Purple. I remember some of the bands had a torrid time. Meatloaf, for instance, just got canned off the stage. And we had been on just directly before Meatloaf, and not a thing, because I don't think we went out there with looking like the rock stars. We just went out and played. There was no. In fact, I think Tommy came on in a pair of wellies. I mean, good film, because it was a horrendous day. It rained the entire time we were there. It was just a mud bath from beginning to end. So I think Tommy came out to the front and had a big pair of wellies on. And they took one look at him and go, this guy's cool, you know. So it was little things like that, and I think we endeared ourselves. It wasn't intentional, it was just the way we were, you know. So we would end up going to radio stations, and of course the big promotion you'd spend maybe a couple of weeks doing radio interviews all throughout America. So you ended up travelling, flying to some of the radio stations. They were huge, you know, and these guys would have a listenership maybe of 1, 2, 3 million people in Wyoming, and you're going, bloody hell, we're in the middle of nowhere, and yet this radio station is absolutely, and they're the guys that could break you, make you or break you, you know. So of course they were quite intrigued by the whole Irish scene, because there wasn't many bands. Unfortunately, Lizzie hadn't made it in America, the Ratts didn't make it in America, and it wasn't, you know, it was just one of those things, the timelines were wrong. You know, it wasn't because of the music, it was just the timelines and unfortunate circumstances for the band. I think the Ratts were something that could have been huge there. Huge there. But so they were very keen and very interested to hear what we had to say, and to learn about the origins of the rock music, you know. And again at that stage, you know, you two were starting to make waves, but it wasn't, it was seen as slightly part of the new age of it had moved on again. So the new wave of British heavy metal was still happening big in America, you know, and the new age thing hadn't really caught on in America at that stage, not yet, you know. And there was a few bands like Depeche Mode and U2 and Simple Minds really broke through, but it was very early days for them as well. So they were so all we could really quote in terms of Irish bands was everybody knew Van Morrison, and everybody knew Lizzie. The radio stations were aware, and everybody knew Rory. And after that, there was nothing. You know, not even Gary Moore's solo stuff. It meant nothing to them. It wasn't doing anything there. You know, it was later years that Gary started making an impression there himself. So really, there was just the two topics to talk about. Was Lizzie and Rory. You know, and you know, they were the influence. Of course, we talked about the Horselips, who had done considerably well in America, but didn't persist at it. I think the Corships could have done really, really well in America. But, you know, when you head out into, you know, Indiana or someplace that they didn't really know about them. They knew about Lizzie and they knew about Rory, but that was it. So that was the only two bands. So they were intrigued to know how we got started and how we learned the ropes and how we ended up coming to America to tour there. So it was the conversations didn't last long because it was just about Lizzie and Rory, right? Because that's all there was to talk about, you know, and the influence. So they you know, they were more interested in the background of the bands. And how those bands got started, like how Lizzie evolved as well, you know, and how Rory evolved, you know, and we were explaining to them, you know, that he heard the music via the American radios down in Cork, you know, and he got turned on to the blues that way there, and that's how he learned. So in many respects it wasn't much different from the way that we learned, only that we were fortunate enough then to become aware enough to go and occasionally see. Lizzie and Rory were superstars to us. They only came in very occasionally, unless you were prepared to go to Belfast or Dublin. The country people didn't get an opportunity unless you got a lift there. And you know, we were young, and my mother and father would go, oh, you're not going to Belfast, oh, we're not letting you out to Dublin, no way, you know. So the few times when we did rebel and get away or sneak off and not tell them that we're actually going there to see the band, we would occasionally see the odd band when they come in. So from our point of view, that was the great thing about what the Horslips did, was they actually brought the music to the kids. And they brought a wee rock and roll show with their lights and their big PA, so we thought it was the real deal, you know. So we thought this is amazing. So that really, they were responsible, I think, for so many bands, including they gave so many bands a break. The Undertones supported them, U2 supported them in the early days. You know, the U2 was quite close with them. So, you know, if it hadn't been for them, they were responsible for it. Yeah, it was a platform, and they were very generous with that. You know, it was really kind of them to do that, you know, and to see that there was a younger generation coming through that were trying to move and move out of the sort of the show band era that it was still very big in Ireland and still reluctant to let go. And yes, and some aspects of it there was still you know, you had the leftovers from the show bands, and then the disco, but they hadn't really taken off at the time. So there was a little void in between, and I think maybe we filled that. So the DJs in America wanted to know all about that, and so we would kind of explain the roots and the origins and the two bands that we knew that was really making inroads at the time. And it really internationally, that's all there was. Until the mighty U2 came along, you know, and then it changed everything, you know. But if it hadn't been for Rory and Lizzie, those record companies wouldn't have been looking in Ireland in the first place. They just wouldn't. They'd said it to us on many occasions. We had dismissed Ireland. You know, it wasn't until the success of Rory and the success of Van the Man and Lizzie that they started to think, well, hang, maybe there's more happening here, you know, than we know about, and that's how. We would talk generally about stuff like that there, you know, and continue our tours then throughout.